Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. I want to thank Gail Boyd for kindly inviting me to speak on this wonderful platform. My name is Roberta Gambarini. I am a singer. I was born and raised in Torino, Italy, but I've been in the US for a long time, and I have had the possibility. I was really blessed with the possibility to play and sing for a long time in the US, along with many of the great jazz masters whom I was dreaming of meeting when I was growing up in Italy. So my beginnings were in the then industrial town of Torino in northern Italy, the Fiat city. It's kind of, I refer to it like as a little bit like the Italian Detroit because it was a big auto industry city. And my parents were big jazz fans. They actually met at a jazz concert, and they were part of the fabric of that city. My father was a factory worker, and my mother a seamstress. But they had this great love and understanding of culture and of music, and especially of the music of the greats. They had had the chance as adolescent in post-war Torino to breathe and enjoy this music that would come freely from the US, whereas before, for the generations before who grew up during fascism, this was forbidden music. So there was a great, like in many other countries, right after World War II, there was this understanding that this music was somehow signaling freedom and a new era. So that was the perception, and that is also the truth. But that was the reason why so many people fell in love with this music at that time in Europe. And my parents were among those people. So my father played tenor saxophone when he was very young. His idols were Coleman Hawkins and especially Don Byas. Don Byas was a big influence on a lot of the young players of that generations in Europe. And so he loved Don Byas, he loved Lucky Thompson, and of course all the greats, Coleman Hawkins, Lester Young. And so he never got to really make his dream come true of becoming a full-time player of the music of the greats. However, he remained a long-time fan, and he and my mother used to go hear jazz music live whenever it was possible. And they used to bring me along too when I came along, when I was very little. They used to bring me along to hear concerts, even if I was very young, especially in a small jazz club in northern Italy where they were involved in being volunteering, helping organize these concerts. And that's where I got the chance to hear a lot of great players when I was very young. Some of these players left an indelible imprint in my heart and soul for several reasons. Of course, musically, but even when I was too small to understand the intricacies and of music, I was just able to feel there were a lot of lasting impressions. I saw Eddie Lockjaw Davis, Clark Terry, Dexter Gordon, Slide Hampton. They used to come and play this whole circuit of smaller jazz clubs in northern Italy. That was a lasting impression because not only because of the music, but because I realized that at a young age, and that's something that stayed with me. I realized that this music, the music of the masters, I don't like to so much to use the term jazz as is because we'll talk about that a little bit later. I refer to it as the music of the masters, and the masters being the great artists who were the descendants of people brought to the so-called New World, to the northern part of the Americas in slavery, and who originated this language that was and still is new. So masters like Louis Armstrong, of Charlie Parker, so that's why I refer to it as the music of the masters. And individuality is very important in this music. And this is one of the things that I noticed as a little girl watching these giants. Each one of them, Johnny Griffin, saw him many times. Griffin Jaws, Alcon Sims also. I even got to see the great, oh my God, the great Jimmy Witherspoon. He was already very sick, but in what probably was one of his last tours in Europe. But his presence was so incredible. And each one of these giants were their own person, their own personality, had their own story to tell. Each one was unique. And each one of these giants had this incredible ability to project human warmth, to be empathic, but at the same time to connect with the audience and to be who they were. Actually, right behind me, I carry always this picture with me. I have the picture of the great Jimmy Woody. So he was one of the greatest bass players of all times. And he was one of these greats that I got the chance to witness when I was little, and that later on, after I moved to the US, I was so blessed to be able to play with. So here's remembering Jimmy Woody. Jimmy Woody. So such a great artist, a great soul, and his own person. He had his own way of speaking, his own way of relating to the world, his own way of communicating. Each one of these greats had this characteristic, and this is something that fascinated me and draw me towards this type of music at a very young age in Torino, Italy, as I was growing up. So the second element was listening to the records. So this is another big fortune I had, is to be exposed to this music through the record collection of my father. As I said before, my father was a big admirer of tenor saxophonists. And one of these greats that he loved and adored was James Moody. And I remember seeing James Moody when I was very little. I was 12. My father took me. And um, I remember also listening to these recordings and feeling, just from the recording, feeling the warmth and the presence and the beauty of that sound. And once again, many years after, when I moved to the States, James Moody became my mentor, one of my biggest friends, and really my US family. My US family. James Moody became my mentor. Oops. One of my biggest friends. Sorry, and, I'm trying really to read the comments on the US family. On the YouTube, because I have a problem in vision, so I can't see very well your comments. And the voice is coming back to me. So sorry, I'm very technically challenged. I'm very bad at these types of things. But um, like I was saying, James Moody and his lovely wife Linda became my American family once I moved to the States. And this is all part, it's like a closing of a circle. These the very same artists that I so much admired and dreamed of meeting one day when I was little were most of the artists that I was so blessed to meet in person years after. I moved to the US in 1998. And that was really, really a big blessing, the big miracle, and the biggest happiness of my life. The reason why I got into this music was largely informed by the first impressions that I received from listening to the records and from watching these giants perform at a very young age. And it was an impression that is etched in me very deeply, and something that happened before I was able to understand with my rationality. I was very little. I was like, my first record I listened to when I was probably 1 year old, 2 years old, because that was the music in my household. And so the strong impression that this music left on me happened before I developed rational capabilities to understand even what this was, or it was just pure feeling. And that's the same feeling then that I felt again many years after, when I was an adult and I was able to finally meet in person and have a long conversation and develop friendships with a lot of these greats who were my mentors. So I consider myself very, very, very fortunate. Chronologically, I've been, like I said, listening to the music of the masters since I was very, very little. Um, I had a knack for learning foreign languages, so my parents sent me to a English school for children when I was very little. And so at a still relatively young age, maybe I started at 5 learning English. And so when I was maybe 10, 11 years old, I was already able to understand the lyrics of, uh, of the songs as they were played. And so little by little, I started getting more and more into the music and wanting to not just sing on the recordings, which is what I did from the start and what I still do. I like to think the best way to get the feel of the music is still to just in the privacy of my room to just sing on the records and get the feel of the music that way. It's for me something very personal that I still do for myself. So after that first period, when I knew the songs, I learned the lyrics, and I loved to sing. When I was still very young, I was just 17. um, I happened to run into the opportunity to do some gigs in one of those very same jazz clubs in northern Italy where my parents were taking me to and where they were volunteering. It was a cultural association to do some performances with a local rhythm section. And so that's really how I started getting the opportunity to sing this music out there. Um, Going a little back in time, I took some music lessons privately at age 12. Um, I wanted to learn to play tenor saxophone, but I was too little. And so my father decided that my first instrument should be clarinet. So I took some clarinet lessons. But when my father was out to work, and with the complicity of my mother, I oftentimes, and when I was that age, was about 11, I used to steal my dad's tenor saxophone and try to play something, and even taught myself to play a couple of little melodies. And so I remember one time my mother let me bring this big instrument at the after party at the end of the middle school year. And I became, of course, very popular by playing melodies on this instrument. But my father got to know it, and so he was a little bit disappointed that he didn't think the tenor saxophone was an instrument for a girl, for a little girl. And so he said, okay, you can take clarinet lessons. So that's the initial of my music educations. But I studied privately. And after that, I cannot say that I am academically trained, or that I received a standard education. In other words, I am not a product of a school system. My existence was flowing through different paths. Maybe that was what it was supposed to be. And in general, I everything that I grasped trying to learn, I did it by myself, by mostly by listening to the recordings, by um, by trying to. I taught myself to play some piano. um, I studied some classical compositions on the side because it was my attitude, and I loved it, and I still love it. But for jazz at the time, there was no education, jazz education to speak of. So I can consider myself self taught, but it doesn't mean, I mean, it means that my hunger for learning was even more rabid than had I been in a school enrolled in a precise project of a program of teaching. So I used to listen to everything I could get my hands on and try to get my hands on as many recordings I could. And so it was not um, it was not I don't want to say it was not easy. It was fun, but it involved a lot of work to try to, you know, get. And I was fortunate because I had the records of my father, but this hunger for recordings and for listening stayed with me, and it's still with me this day. So I can say that that is the way that I learned. And really listening, repeating, trying to understand what was behind the music. And I was fortunate enough that when I was in high school, I was at the Liceo d'Azeglio, beautiful high school in Torino. We had teachers who, especially a philosophy and history teacher, who really um, gave us the instruments um, to inquire and to try to understand about history, and both about Italian history, but also about world history. And so I developed a passion for inquiring about the history, and I tried to inquire as much as possible about the history of this music. And so already back then, I tried to understand the culture that this music was coming from, the African American culture, from, of course, the standpoint of being so many miles away. And it was not immediate, but what I did was try to understand it, or get closer in an understanding, through listening to the artists. So I read a lot of books. I read James Baldwin, I read Invisible Man, I read a lot of poetry. I have a great passion for poetry, which I find it's an art that's very the closest possibly art form of art to music, because it's about the ineffable. It talks about things you cannot see, touch, but you can only feel. And so I'm very fond of poetry, so I read a lot of poetry. I was very lucky also, again, when I came to the US, to meet some great writers and some poets that I whose work I had read way back in Italy. So a lot of inquiry on my own, and a lot of trying to feel, think, and mostly feel. Try to get a feel and an understanding of getting closer as possible to an understanding of the culture and the history too, which it's not an easy thing to do. But I tried as much as possible, and that's still my passion, to know as much as possible about history. So yeah, so that was the prelude. And I played in Italy, and starting at 17, so I got the chance to meet a lot of great players in Italy, with them like Renato Sellani, great piano player. So I kind of built my bones on stage, so to speak, in Italy. And I believe I did everything I could do in Italy, being in a situation, in a specific social situation. I was a girl, and I was from a layer of society that did not facilitate. In Italy, there's a system that's a little bit similar to a caste system. So it's very difficult, if you're from a certain strata, in a certain layer of the social tissue construct, to become an artist. Very, very difficult, difficult financially, and but most of all difficult to build yourself the connections and to really be allowed to have a place. It's very, very difficult. It's also difficult to be a woman, a girl. It still is, and to be a headliner and a leader. So it was a little bit complicated. But I believe I did everything I could do, and I'm happy about the opportunities I had there. After a while, though, I really felt like, in spite of all the economical hardships and everything else, I felt like I needed to come to the U.S. to really get a direct relationship with these masters, with the to really, really get more in the meat of the music, to feel the music, and to possibly see if I could be a part of this great big tissue that is the music of the masters. And so I came to the US in 1998, initially with the artist diploma scholarship with the New England Conservatory, and which I'm very grateful. Shout out to Dominic Eade and Alan Chase and my teacher Cecil McBee. You know, it was a great time. However, at the same time, 1998, I was admitted as one of the semi-finalists in the Monk competition, and that was an incredible experience because I got to go to Washington D.C. and play. Um, the band included some of my idols, absolute idols, like Grady Tate, man, Grady Tate and Norman Simmons. You know, and there was a great bassist, Michael Bowie, who was younger, not from that generation, but a fantastic player. So it was a great rhythm section. So I was excited, and yeah, it was kind of a cultural shock because I had never been to the U.S. before. So I came to in the environment of a competition, which is a special place. And I'm satisfied. I went in the finals. I made it to the finals, and I'll be forever grateful. The great Dee Dee Bridgewater was in the I say in the panel, and she's a great friend and fantastic singer. You know, so I had a lot of support from great singers like Dee Dee and Sheila Jordan. I met Sheila when I was in Italy when I was a teenager. Mwah! Love you, Sheila. And so I was able to kind of overcome this shock of getting to the States and boom, in a major competition through again, through speaking to these giants. It was at the competition that I met another one of my mentors, the great Jimmy Heath. And actually, he invited me. We had a conversation, and we talked about Kenny Durham. Kenny Durham is a musician that's very dear to my heart. I had been listening to death to the records of Kenny Durham, but most of all, I had gotten my hands somehow while in Italy on a book. There was a piano versions of Kenny Durham's compositions, and I really love, always did. I love to explore and to listen to the Great American Songbook, of course, but also the Great American Songbook made of songs composed by great jazz instrumentalists, so to speak, some of the great masters. So the production of composers such as Kenny Durham and Gigi Grice, and I always loved this music, and I love the music of Kenny Durham. So when I spoke about that with Jimmy Heath at the competition, and I had written some lyrics to some of Kenny Durham's songs, so he invited me to take part to a concert. It was the jazz legacy ensemble of Larry Ridley, another legendary bass player. So, and that happened at the Schönberg Center for research in African American culture in Harlem. That happened right then in, I think it was the beginning of 99 or even the end of 1998. It was a few months after the competition. I was invited to take part to a program about the music of Kenny Durham. So I remember Virgil Jones was on the gig, and the great Charles Davis. Wow, so incredible. So I was really blessed because I had this opportunity right from the get-go to get in touch with the musicians who are the source of the music. Um, and I insist the musicians are the source, the lives of these people, the spirit of the greats who made this music. Clark Terry. I learned a lot about this music by talking to these greats and just by hearing them telling the stories of their lives. I remember I understood a lot about history just by listening to the experience and the stories that Moody would tell me about uh, fighting in World War II and then coming back to the US and realizing that, and these are his words, that World War prisoners, Nazis, maybe even SS, were treated better than US citizens of African American descent who fought and gave their blood for the nation. So this was Moody's recount of his experience, and it made me understand a lot about the music and the human element on the music, and what, I'm getting even emotional now, what these human beings went through in order to bring through the years, bring to us of this generation the glory, the joy, the bliss of the music. And for this, I will be forever grateful to James Moody, Hank Jones, Clark Terry, but all the greats, Dave Brubeck, all these greats who gave us so much with their human quality, and made us understand the greatness of this music. And this is my suggestion to the young people. Okay, always look to the source. The source is very important. You are lucky because now you have a lot of sources. You have YouTube, where you can find each and every recording ever made, even rare recordings. A lot of stuff is available. So go to the source and spend time really trying to understand the language. And a lot of these greats, like Dizzy Gillespie was a great teacher, but they would teach in a special way that's really mostly through osmosis and through example. But the truth is out there, but you have to look for it. And by really getting into the music and trying to understand what Dizzy was trying to say and what was behind what he was playing, and the way Carmen McRae, why would she express herself in this way, by really inquiring and getting into the music of the greats, I believe that is the best way of learning. And then of course in school too is wonderful, you're training, and there's so many things available to us right now. But the source, going to the source, for me is very important, and that's an inner work that you have to do on your own, following your soul, and trying to really understand what the message is that these greats were given us, as human beings. So that would be my encouragement and suggestion. And one last thing, how did I cope with the pandemic? I didn't, like everybody else. It was very difficult for me to be separated from my mom in Italy, and I'm sure for everybody else. And but I think this pandemic put us in touch with our humanity, and how fragile um, we are, and how important, again, human contact and is human contact and human relationships are. I worked a lot on myself. I worked on my body, my breathing, because I'm a singer, and for all singers, the body is our instrument, and we never end working on it. And I also worked on new projects, mostly in an organic way. I like to say that it's a little bit like getting pregnant. So I kind of got, ideas in me and let them grow by themselves. But this gave birth to my new projects. One is a duo with the great Cyrus Chestnut, voice and piano. Yeah. And another project, I wanted to say also how important to me is traveling and looking at other cultures and trying to get away from the structures of thought of my culture to try to understand how other people might think, feel, and so my second project will always also be out in 22 is with the group of a great Argentinian pianist, the great Pablo Ziegler, who played with Astor Piazzolla many years. And it will be a fusion between tango and I want to say jazz, African American music. There's an African component in tango too, I discovered by doing it, as always. By trial and error, you understand and you learn a lot of things and you make a lot of connections, because music is about connections, connecting, understanding, taking things in and reading inside things. And in this, we are blessed to have the souls of our teachers still with us. I feel Moody with me every day, and all the other great masters. I said again, Jimmy Heath, Hank Jones, so many of them, and I feel grateful to have had the chance to have this experience. So yeah, thanks for listening to this talk, and I wish I could have seen your questions. I'm gonna try right now. James Moody became my mentor. This is I read them after, because like I said, I was a little bit technically challenged, but yeah, I wish everybody a great day, and thank you so much for listening. See you all soon in concert. Hopefully, we'll be able to slowly get back to our touring schedule. Hopefully, all over the world, and let's hope that we can leave this great tragedy that has been this pandemic behind. I want to just, for the last thought, is I want to remember all the greats that left us. A lot of them due to this virus. My teacher, Mike Longo. And God bless you all and your families. Ciao, ciao. I'll see you soon. Arrivederci.